Hey there, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of Peep into Education. And on today's episode, I have special guest Lloyd Hopkins with us. Lloyd is joining us from the $1 Million Teaching Project. He is the founder and CEO. He's also an Arizona native, an entrepreneur, educator, very passionate and involved community leader. And so I'm really excited to connect with Lloyd here today. I've been very familiar with the $1 Million Teacher Project for a couple of years, and I'm really excited to get a chance to connect with him and let him share a little bit about his background and then talk a little bit about what he's doing with the project. And we'll get going for today. So, hi, Lloyd. Thank you again for joining me. And
What's up, Kylie? I'm honored and privileged to be here with you today. I love your platform. I love the conversations that you have. And I love the light that you're trying to shine on those doing work in and around education and all what's happening with our system here in Arizona. So
yes.
thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So we're going to kick off. I'd love for you to please introduce a little bit about yourself and what led you to what you're doing right now with the $1 Million Teacher Project, and what led you to the field of education, and just give us a little context of that journey.
Yeah, so again, my name is Lloyd Hopkins. I'm a social entrepreneur. I'm an educator, and I'm one of those bleeding hearts that believe it's possible to change the world. So I say that I was driven to this work in three phases. The first phase was as a student, because I describe myself as a slip through the cracks kid. So when I was growing up, I wasn't one of those kids that was good enough to get a lot of attention. I wasn't bad enough to get a lot of attention. So I kind of just floated through the middle, often feeling unseen or unrecognized,
Mm,
which is really a dangerous place for anybody to exist.
absolutely.
You don't necessarily really feel valued. But I did get value from my mom, who was a single mother that raised three kids on her own, and from my community. So I was able to get embraced by my community. But through my formative years in education, I never really encountered that teacher that took me under their wing and said, Lloyd, you're going to be somebody. I believe in you.
Mhm.
And that's a problem.
Yeah,
That's a problem. And so coming out of high school, I wanted to be for kids what I didn't have,
exactly.
what which was a caring male adult role model. Like we didn't really have a lot of that, and there were even fewer Black positive male role models in my environment. That
Right,
that I came up in. There weren't a lot of Black teachers at any of my schools. And the list goes on and on. So I
right,
really came out of high school with a sense that I wanted to be that for kids. I wanted to be that for people that specifically looked like me. That was
right.
important to me.
Hmm.
The second part that led me to the work that I'm doing today is as a parent. So I have two kids. Today, my kids have successfully navigated the public education and private school systems. My son is 22 years old, will be 23 in June. He's getting his master's degree at ASU.
Nice,
My daughter is 18. She graduates from St. Mary's High School in a matter of weeks, and we're getting her ready for college.
nice.
But a part of as a parent, my kids never went to our local neighborhood school. And largely that was because we didn't have confidence in the schools that were in our area. And so we would regularly have to drive across town to the higher rated schools.
Yeah.
Because as parents, we want our kids to get the best education that we can provide them to the best of our ability. And so I was one of those parents that did research. What school is the highest rated? And where is my kid going to get the best education?
Right.
And so through that process, me and my family would regularly commit to 30 minutes, an hour long round trip commutes to go
Yep.
to the better school. But every time we did that, our local school lost a talented family, lost engaged parents, and we drove to another community and gave that to another community. So that's an issue. I don't have a problem with parents being able to choose whatever school is best for them and their kid, but it should be based on what the school offers. It should be based on your kid's interest level and their talents, not
Right.
because you don't have confidence in your neighborhood school. You don't have
Right.
confidence in teachers. And so that was the second epiphany, that in the work of creating an equitable education system, we first have to make sure there are quality, passionate, engaged teachers on every campus. The
Absolutely.
third was my own professional journey. So through my journey, I've worked with youth offenders, after school recreation, dropout prevention. I worked with kids on overcoming their out of the classroom needs so they can be more successful in the classroom, which is absolutely something that we have to address. Kids they bring their life into the classroom. And so they have to be surrounded with support even before they get in the classroom to be successful in the classroom.
Right.
So I really enjoyed that work, but it really wasn't but it was my time that I spent in the classroom as a teaching assistant that was the most transformative. I worked in the Alhambra Elementary School District and at a number of schools, but I was a teaching assistant at Barcelona Middle School for about 6 years. And that time impacted me so greatly because, one, it showed me I'm not cut out to be a teacher. I need to leave that for some other brilliant individual and let them do that work. You don't want me in the classroom, I'll ruin some kids' life. Two, it exposed me to the plight of teachers firsthand. How they're often underpaid, undervalued, under-resourced, overworked, despite showing up every day to make gains in kids' lives, to teach students, to impart wisdom in them so they can be successful in life. I saw teachers still showing up every day, despite not always having what they need, despite being stressed out because of bills or student loans or whatever the case may be, but still showing up every single day, trying to make a difference in kids' lives. And that's a community issue. There's no better way to describe it. That teachers are an extension of our households. They're an extension of our parenting. That I can't tell you how many parents during the summer are counting down the days until their kids go back to school. It's like the teaching profession is a cornerstone profession in our lives that we depend on, but we really treat it as an afterthought. We don't treat it with the importance that it actually serves in all of our lives. That really, we should view teachers as parents, as collaborators. There should be a relationship between schools and the community where they're working together. And so what I believe is that everybody wants to be involved. They just don't often know how. And I get that everybody's not a crazy teacher fan like me and is going to go create an organization and dedicate their lives to it. But I believe everybody does want to be involved in some shape, form, or fashion. You just have to create the pathways to make it easy for them to get in. And so it was those realizations and me realizing the importance of the teaching profession and that it's mandatory that we support teachers, and knowing that everybody wants to be involved and should be involved led me to create $1 Million Teacher Project. So one part, I can advocate for the importance of the profession and put it on people's minds that no, this is a profession we need to show up for. We need to do more for our teachers. Now, after I've planted that seed, then I want to give you the pathways to get involved. So $1 Million Teacher Project creates the pathways for involvement. Our entire model revolves around helping Title I schools, which are schools that have at least 80% of their students on free and reduced lunch. And that means that at least 80% of their students are living at or below the poverty level. So we work with those schools on creating community-centered pathways to help them increase how the teachers are recognized, drive more support directly into their classrooms, and create innovative ways to impact how the teachers are compensated. So like when we first when you first encountered our work, it was through our teacher appreciation package program, the TAP
Mm-hmm.
program, where your bookstore was able to partner with us on offering a discount to teachers.
Yeah.
So everybody's form of involvement isn't going to be the same, but we all need to get involved in some shape, form, or fashion. And
Right.
so we offer those pathways of you can either help us with our teacher recognition programming, you can help us with how we support teachers in the classroom, or you can help us with how we're trying to impact teacher compensation in one of those ways. So we try to make getting involved digestible, easy access, cost effective, and community driven.
Thank you so much for all the work that you're putting in with that project, and really just highlighting the importance of teachers, and also kind of trying to help alleviate some of those issues that they have. And I think with the TAP program, we were able to support, please remind me if I'm wrong, but we were able to support a teacher, with resources and things like that for their classroom by, basically fundraising for them. So that was a great opportunity that you're offering, and for people to have that connection. And so I want to kind of backtrack to you're sharing like your experience, your personal experience. So being a parent, your 22-year-old getting their master's. Wow, that's amazing. It took me a long time, and I definitely want to, because I have two little ones, 8 and 11, and to very much streamline that for them, it's very possible.
Yeah.
And a lot of people think you have to focus on master's right away, where you kind of work both at the same time. So it is a lot of time and dedication and commitment. So that's awesome. And obviously you're doing what you need to do. You're an involved parent, you're engaged, and which speaks volumes to your children's success in their academics career as well. But you also made a very good point about, having to travel in 30 minutes, an hour, to put your student in a better school environment than what is closest to you. And that's a huge topic that, a lot of people we do discuss when we're talking about boundary lines, and what schools you have available in your community, and also where do you have access to quality education for your child, regardless of what that looks like for you, because what it could mean for me could look different for you. And so for us to have options, a good thing here in Arizona is we do have school choice, and a lot of states are starting to bring in school choice, where you can bring your child where you see it best fit, as long as they have the capacity to bring your child on for that grade level. And so me too, I drive 30 minutes to drive my kids to school. We don't go to our neighboring school, and that is a preference based off of demographics. I want my children to be around peers that resemble their ethnicity a little bit closer, but also having a full diverse population of students within that demographic of that school. So but also to get them in a program that, yes, that school is performing higher. And a lot of people are like, why do you focus on academics? And it's like, no, the academics wasn't the focus. I think what says a lot, especially, and I'll link this in our chat as well for those that are watching, is when you're looking at a school report card and you have to, decipher what that looks like. Every school is different. They receive a letter grade. And of course, academics is a main thing that's listed on there. But I also look at, like, what are the suspension rates? What are the expulsion rates? Like, what are your quality certified teachers versus uncertified teachers? So it has all of this information. What's the per pupil spending for that school? Do they have a lot of income to that school to help support those programs? Because if you have a very low per pupil spending, and even in Arizona, it's vast. Like, you can see, I saw anywhere on the low end probably about 1,100 per pupil, and the high end about 2,700 per pupil. And a lot of people are like, well, why do you have such a disparity in that? And that goes off of taxes and the district that you live in. So all of those things play into play. And I'm not going to go too far into
but
that.
what's amazing about even you mentioning that is, so we're kind of coming at this from a position of privilege, right? We both work in and around education, so we know the things to look for.
Yeah.
But really, John Q. Public doesn't often have that level of insight. So even just you sharing the things that you evaluate when trying to pick a school for your kid is really empowering for other folks that might listen to this conversation, and they're in the same position that we were in or are in with our kids, and knowing the things to evaluate. So that's fantastic, because it wasn't until later on that I even learned to start looking at some of those things.
Yes, and it's important. When we're talking about empowering families and teachers, like just knowing the rights into the things that you have access to, and how to look for those types of things. And I think for me on this platform, like that's something I really like to share. And we kind of get into talking about going to school board meetings and things like that. So it's really important. And it's the same for teachers, educators, us teachers, for us to advocate for those things that we need. It's important for us to show up at those places. But I think, as you've mentioned when we were talking earlier, education as a profession is very much, it is, like you said, a cornerstone profession that, and I've equated it to, during the pandemic, we were considered essential workers, but still today, post-pandemic and 4 years later, people belittle the profession of education and they don't respect it. And there is a lot of nuances to why people disagree with education or public education or private or whatever it is. But in essence, a teacher is somebody who is helping to take care of your child and raise your child up, because you think of how many hours upon hours your child is in a school setting. And we have to have those partnerships and be able to work with and support teachers support parents, all of those things.
8 to 9 hours a day, 8 to 9 months out of the year, your kid is on a school campus in a classroom.
Yep.
In all honesty, teachers are spending more time with our kids than we are.
Yep.
8 to 9 hours a day, 8 to 9 months out of the school year.
Absolutely.
I know that. So, like, for example, my daughter she's in cheer. So she would get up and go to school at 5 o'clock in the morning to go to cheer. She would then go to 8 hours of school. She would then go to gymnastics practice after school and then come home and do homework. She's been out of my house the majority of the day. She's only home for about 3 hours before she goes to bed. So out of a 24-hour day, I'm getting her for about 3 hours, and then the majority of that time she's doing homework, and then she has a little bit of downtime, and then she goes to bed. So these teachers are essential, to our relationships with our kids, and we're entrusting them with their care. And I think the general public takes that for granted. That we are entrusting our most valuable possessions, which is our kids, in their care for 8 to 9 hours a day, 8 to 9 months out of the year.
Yeah.
In nature, there's a term called keystone animal, and a keystone animal is like there's certain versions of turtles, wolves, different animals that play a part in the food chain. That when you take those animals out of the ecosystem crumbles.
Yes.
Teachers are a keystone, not only a cornerstone, a keystone profession. If we remove teachers from our ecosystem, our society collapses.
Absolutely.
Period, point blank, they're shaping our future, but more importantly, they're impacting our community today.
Absolutely.
Because what they impart kids with in our classroom right now, kids leave that classroom and take that out into the world, take it home with them, take it into their interaction with their friends, family members. So it's imperative that
Absolutely.
we realize, I think you mentioned earlier, that we're in danger of losing like 100,000 teachers by 2025. We have over 2,000 classrooms today without a permanent qualified teacher.
Yep.
We lose the majority of new teachers after 3 years in the profession.
Yep.
It's a crisis level.
Absolutely.
And it's right under our noses. And I don't think we realize how close we are to teacher-less classrooms.
Yes.
And I don't mean that we won't have some version of a teacher, because we will, but there'll be a glorified babysitter who's there just to make sure kids don't kill each other.
Pretty
but
much.
there's no instruction being delivered from an educator, and that's a problem. So our entire system suffers if we don't address this issue now, and we can't
100%.
wait. We got to be proactive instead of reactive.
Absolutely, 100%. And yes, and that's I equated that to, like, what would we do if we're losing all the doctors and all of the, like, the medical healthcare professions? Like, we are an essential piece, and it kind of really kind of goes back into full circle of why are educators not paid up there in those levels of those same professions, because for us to be teachers, we have to have very high levels of academic behind us, bachelor's, master's degrees, and all of these things to be considered high quality. And it's not discounting anybody, especially at the high school level, that joins from the industry, right? Because you're versed in your profession of that industry for career and technical education. But you also don't, a lot do not understand the basic foundations of classroom management and what it looks like to be an effective teacher in lines of academics and math and reading. And it's really important. In a past podcast, we talked about, the literacy crisis, which is not really a crisis. It's just really much exacerbated because we're seeing the effects of COVID on our young children. So my 8-year-old really much falls into that line of, because he was in kindergarten when COVID hit. And so now he's in 3rd grade, about to be in 4th grade. So you're really starting to see those trends of how even teachers who are not versed in phonics or versed in proper literacy and reading techniques, and how these kids who miss those gaps are struggling now to catch up. And so there's so much that plays into it in the shortage, and obviously the climate and culture of education, the parents, and so behavior, like all of these things. It's so much. And so, to even kind of sit back and for you guys to say, okay, how can we alleviate some type of pressure, but also support these teachers in even just providing classroom materials is super important. And then
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
And what I was just going to say is that, we treat the teaching profession. So to your point about how classroom management plays a part, how dealing with students' behavior, literacy challenges, all those things play a part in being in a teacher's ability to deliver instruction.
Yes.
And we treat the profession just like anybody can do it. And that's not the case.
No.
Nobody's looking at LeBron James and thinking that we can just pick up a ball and go score 30 points for the Lakers. Right. No, we all know that he has a unique set of skills and talents that help him achieve his heights that he does in the game of basketball. Absolutely. We have to look at teachers the same way, because you can be a master of content and not understand and not be able to deliver that content in a way that a student can receive it.
Right.
You can not possess the ability to deliver that content in a way that produces learning. Like, that's a skill. You have to be skilled at relationship building. You have to be skilled at the actual delivery of instruction to make those things happen. So just not anybody can do it. And that's really where $1 Million Teacher Project came from. We want to first make teachers feel like $1 million, because this is a profession that just not anybody can do. And they should feel like $1 million for how much they're contributing to society. 2, we want to eventually create an ecosystem where teachers can actually command $1 million salary. Right. A salary that's commensurate with how important they are to their societal impact. So all of these things go into the DNA of why I founded this organization, because we want to make teaching the destination, especially in Title I marginalized communities with large numbers of underserved, under-resourced kids.
Yeah.
We want to make those communities the destination for the best and brightest teachers.
Absolutely. And it's so important. And just to give people a context of numbers, so specifically here in Arizona, we have about almost 2,300 schools in Arizona. And then of those 2,300, we have 1,300 that are listed as Title One here in Arizona. And then nationally, Title One, there's about 43% of schools are listed as Title One. So you gotta, you guys can impact so many just through your organization alone. And there's so many that so many schools to be helped. But for us to really think about that, right? 43% of our school population are students who are in poverty level households, who are in receiving free and reduced lunch, which is, it's a great support to have, but it's still the context of, are we paying attention to the communities? And I really advocate for this. Like, are we paying attention to the communities in which these kids come from, and really trying to support those? But for teachers, when you're going into those communities to be teachers, do you understand the community that you're going to be teaching in, and the hurdles that these kids face? Because it does go back in full circle to you, because that way that you interact with the parents, the way that you interact with the child, it's going to look different district by district depending on where you're at. And so just to have different varying levels of support is like extremely important from that point of view.
And there's not to interrupt,
No.
but if I can just interject for a moment,
Go ahead.
And especially in the conversations around teacher retention and recruitment, there's a lot of emphasis that goes into, right now, there's a lot of emphasis going into how do we strengthen the pipeline?
Yep.
How do we get new teachers into the profession, which absolutely is important. But there's not enough emphasis being also put in at the same frequency to how do we keep them in the classroom, like once they're in there. And so we have to look at how do we create ecosystems of support around educators.
Yes.
Where we're taking care of teachers mentally, physically, and emotionally to put them into the position to do that same thing for their kids, for their students. Because a happy, healthy, whole teacher creates a happy, healthy, whole student.
Absolutely. And that says so much, to social emotional learning. And that, again, for whatever reason it is, it's controversial in our world of education, but we very much know we have to be mentally stable, especially in this world. Educators, they're not just teachers. They become inadvertently therapists. They're counselors. They deal with crisis on a day-by-day basis. Just for the, say 20, I'll be nice to say 25 kids in the classroom, right? We know it's way more than that sometimes, but and then on top of their own personal, situations. Like I've had one of the teachers in a program that I support, her house burned down and she lost everything in October, but is still teaching and here and like dealing with things. And, and I've, witnessed so much as when I was a teacher, so much trauma that these kids face. And I remember one time it's like, okay, I need to take a break. So for lunch, I'm going to just turn off the lights in my office and just take a nap. But, to have spaces in the schools. So I kind of noticed some schools have, some type of like relaxing rooms for you to kind of degress and debrief for a little bit. And they offer it to the students, which I think is amazing. But when we have constant conflict on what is appropriate for a school setting and not, and how do we deal with behaviors, how do we deal with the social emotional health of teachers and students. But for the teachers specifically, we get access to, therapies through our insurances and all of those things, but that's fundamental, like, of course, but we have to do that work. But to have those types of resources readily available to us within either the school building or the district is, I think, would take another level of support, because these teachers do face a lot. But I think a main thing too is like with our administrators and anybody making high level decisions is, are you really actually listening to what the teachers are saying and making action upon what they're recommending as the people in the room for those 180 daes out of the year? And I feel like a lot don't get listened to, and that's kind of the common consensus I hear still to this day as my current role. And I think administrators have to do better with taking heed and listening to what the teachers are needing and acting upon that.
To your point, that I absolutely feel like if more administrators, elected officials, school leaders were listening to the needs of teachers, $1 Million Teacher Project will be on every campus, on every school, So we got a lot of work to do. We're making strides. We're creating great partnerships, and we're doing the work to try to serve as many teachers as we can, But we need more support. We need more investment so we can grow. Like you said, there are 1,300 Title I schools on this in this state. We want to be able to serve at least half of them, with our programming. So,
Absolutely.
so conversations like this are helpful because it helps put additional eyes on the work that we're doing and exposing people to ways that they might be able to get involved.
Absolutely. And so from your perspective and like personally, like where do you think is an area, I think I know what you're gonna say, but what area do you feel that really needs to be focused on in the world of education to really kind of support these issues that we're facing, or if you had like a general message, like what action item do we need to actually do to help make the system a little bit better for everyone involved?
So the first thing is that for me, the work of creating an equitable education system starts with teachers, because you can have an ineffective teacher in a room with all the bells and whistles, and nothing's going to happen in that classroom. You can have a teacher in an empty parking lot with no resources. You can have an effective teacher in an empty parking lot with no resources, and learning is going to happen there in some shape, form, or fashion. So for me, it all starts with the teacher. We have to invest in ecosystems of support. We have to think about the holistic needs of educators, so we really put them in an environment to meet the holistic needs of students. So we have to invest in the $1 Million Teacher Projects, the new teacher projects, the empowered schools approaches. Like the state really has to invest in those. The second is we have to look at the economic impact of quality educators as well.
Absolutely.
How many doctors, lawyers, business owners, college graduates come out of the classroom of a quality teacher? That impacts our economy. So there's an economic case for our legislators to really think about investing in teachers from a policy standpoint, because it's also good for our economy. So those are two immediate actions that we're working on how do we engage elected officials into really examining the economic impact of quality teachers, how it's good for our state. It attracts more business here when we have the more quality schools that we have, but then also broadening the conversation around teacher support to ecosystems, installing ecosystem support around teachers. We have to look further than just mentoring or induction programming.
Yes.
We have to take a holistic approach to the classroom environment and specifically to our educators.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Yes, that was really powerful, that economic impact, because I've witnessed it firsthand. Teachers that don't do right by their students, and we lost future educators. I watched that happen to a room of 18 seniors, and they just left. They're like, no, I'm not doing this. And it's so empowering, because teachers really do shape and influence the route that these kids go. If they have a teacher that's putting them down negatively, and not encouraging their innate abilities and what they're capable of doing, and hyping them up for the professions that they're excited about, we're losing these kids that are excited for these professions. But particularly, especially around retention and recruitment of educators, is we're not recruiting any new educators when we have such negative connotation and context around the profession of education. And so I feel in relation to that economic impact, like we really have to boost the morale around this as the profession as a whole, because it is a beautiful, as you've experienced and I've experienced, like it's a beautiful place to be when you are empowering students to, one, be academically inclined, but also very much like supporting what they want to be as a human being and as a person. And I feel like that human aspect sometimes gets removed out of education because we're so focused on, oh, we need to build and get these kids ready for the work in college, but we forget that they're people and they have interest, and same for teachers. So just really kind of empowering their general innate abilities, either on the teacher side, the student side, and hopefully this will kind of help us here in these next couple of years. So thank you so much, Lloyd, for joining me on today's episode. Where can everybody find your information? I want to make sure to give a shout out there.
Yep. So you can find us across all social media platforms at MDT Project. So it's at the @ M as in million, D as in dollar, T as in teacher project. So that's on all social media platforms. You can visit our website, www.milliondollarteacherproject.org. So you can also visit our website, sign up for our newsletter so you can stay informed of all the work that we're doing. And if I can give a quick shout out, we're doing, and I'm hoping you'll join us, we're doing our annual fundraiser, July 26th at the Children's Museum of Phoenix. So our annual fundraiser is called the Adult Field Trip. So what we do, we're expecting 300 business, community, education, and nonprofit leaders joining us for an evening where they get to be kids again, all to be reminded of how important teachers are in all of our lives. So during that event, we give our big Feel Like $1 Million award to one teacher during the event. So they're going to get over $3,000 in cash and prizes for just being amazing educators. So I hope you'll join me. I hope your audience will join me July 26th, Children's Museum of Phoenix for the adult field trip from 6 to 9 p.m.
Awesome. I'll be sure to tag that link to the Eventbrite page. I saw that on your social media, so I'll put that in there. But thank you again so much for everything that you guys are doing for you as an educator, and just really supporting the efforts in all these things that we're facing. And thank you again tonight. All of those watching, please like, follow, and share myself, Kylie Elizabeth, the Virtuoso Educator, and Lloyd Hopkins at the $1 Million Teacher Project. And you guys all have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.